Hi guys, this is your instructor Ashish. I am recording this video to give you some help with the chapter 5 programming assignment. To get to know a little more about the assignment, let's go to the modules page, and as we scroll down through the individual weeks, we will see that for chapter 3 I posted an assignment aid video. Similarly, I did for chapter 4, for chapter 5, which will be under the week 11. I will also have a video other than the video provided by our book publisher. There will be another video explaining the details for chapter 5 assignment. When you click on the chapter 5 assignment, you will notice that chapter 5 assignment requires you to answer three exercises from the back of chapter 5, the exercise 5.5, 5.6 and 5.13. So if we look at the 5.5 and 5.6 from the ebook, which is what I am showing you here, here are the two assignments that we are supposed to do for the week 11 or the chapter 5 assignment, which is part of week 11. So 5.5 is describe the four basic elements of counter controlled repetition. Counter is to have a counter, and we are controlling to control the repetition. That's the meaning of counter controlled repetition. There are other ways of repeating where we don't have a counter, we don't know how many times we need to repeat. There are other occasions where we do know how many times, and that's when we should use counter controlled repetition. What are the four basic elements? One is you should have a counter variable or loop counter so that you know how many times my loop is executed. The second basic element, there should be an initial value for your counter variable so that you start with a proper value rather than a random number. The third property for a counter control repetition is the increment or the decrement by which the counter control value or variable is modified each time the repetition occurs. This is called the looping. And the fourth basic element of a counter control repetition is the loop continuation condition. On what basis should my loop continues? If I need to start from 1 and go until 20 and increase by one number every time, then my continuation condition is stop when the value reaches 20. So these are the four basic elements. Please write these in a text file in a Word document and submit it. For more details, please read through chapter 5 and you will have much more detail than what I just mentioned in the last couple of minutes. Compare and contrast the while and the for repetition statement. This is the other one that you need to answer, the exercise 5.6 you see on my monitor. The while and for repetition are two most common repetition statements that you will find in every programming language that you plan to study in future. A for loop is used when you know how many times you need to run a particular piece of code. That is, for is a counter control repetition statement. A while does not have all the properties of counter control repetitions. You do not need to know how many times you need to run a while loop up front ahead of time, which is important in case of for loop. So while has an open way of executing. You can run it any number of times. The while loop may not run even once in your code if the conditions that are stated within the while loop do not meet. For more details, please read through the chapter 5 and you will have much more detail about the difference between while and for loop. The code that you need to write is for the exercise number 5.13, which is factorials, one of the most fascinating part of mathematics. Factorial is a mathematical term, and it states to calculate the multiplication of the number until you reach the number 1. Let's read through this and we will do the assignment properly. Factorials are used frequently in probability problems. The factorial of a positive integer n written as n exclamation point and pronounced as n factorial is equal to the product of the positive integers from 1 through n. write an application that calculates the factorials of 1 through 20. Use the type long, display the result in tabular format. Write what difficulty might prevent you from calculating the factorial of 100. Let us start the work and then we will contemplate on the last sentence about the difficulty with the factorial of number 100. I launch my Eclipse and you can see that I have been prompted to select a workspace, as I have never chosen this option, so that everybody can see this step, which may not come to them every time, but it just gives a good idea about the workspace selection. The code from my previous assignment is open. Let me just close it and we shall start with the next one. As you may see my monitor. So we have the Eclipse. We'll go to File, we'll go to New and Java Project, and this is week 11 exercise 5_13. If I'm not mistaken, this is 513. Let us go next and we shall click on Finish, as we have always done. Opening the project folder, we have the source folder. We will right click on it and say New Class, and we will give it the name, which is the name of the project or the exercise, factorials. How about that? Factorials. Do we want to have a public static void main class? Indeed, static main method. I apologize. We would like to have a stub, a skeleton, a empty definition for a method called public static void main and string arguments, so that we can run it. Let's click on Finish button and our code is being created. Let's maximize it so you all can see it clearly. In this case, we do not want to get anything from the user. We just want to automatically run a loop so that we can display the factorials from the number 1 until the number 20. Before we display anything, let us just set our output properly. So we shall say system.out.printf. Within the parenthesis quotation mark, we will say n\t, which is for tab, n exclamation mark, which is to display like a factorial, %n and %n, and the quotation mark, and end the line with a semicolon. This is to set our output in a tabular format, which was written in our assignment. In order to run a loop, we shall go with for. The reason I said loop is to say that we need to go from number 1 to number 20, and it should be intuitive to you to use a counter controlled repetition loop, because we know we need to start from 1 and go until 20. The variable we will use is long, and we will give it the name my number. The initial value should be 1, semicolon, which is the initial value is 1. How long should my loop run? Until my number is less than or equal to 20, right? And what should happen after every time the loop runs? My number should increment by 1, which is to use the parenthesis, the plus symbol, and this loop shall run 20 times, starting with 1, go until 20. We need to calculate the factorial, so we shall say long my factorial, and we are giving it a number 1 as the initial value. So it will run from 1, my number will be given the number 1. In order to calculate the factorial, let us use an inner for loop, inner as in this, and we shall say for, within the parenthesis symbol, we shall say long, and we need to calculate the factorial. So we shall say my counter equal to 1. My counter equal to 1, a semicolon, my counter. You shall increase until you reach my number, and every time I want my counter to increment in the number by 1. So it shall start with 1. It will go until my number is reached and keep on going. Every time it goes, what I would like to do is, I want to say my factorial is star equal to my counter. Keep running the loop, and every time you run it, if my number is 1, it starts with 1, goes until 1, and 1 into 1 is 1. That is fine, because that's the output of 1 factorial. Next time the for loop, which is the outer for, runs, the my number will be 2. It will say, hey, counter starts with 1, go until 2. 1 will run, it will say my factorial will become 1 time 1, it will run again. This for loop, which I'm highlighting, will run again. My counter will be 2, and it will become 1 into 2. The 2 factorial is nothing but 2 factorial is nothing but 2 times 1, which is nothing but 2. 3 factorial is nothing but 3. 1 times 2 times 3 is 6. Similarly, if I represent it this way, it will make sense. 4 factorial is nothing but 1 times 2 times 3 times 4, and that should be 24. So stuff like that, which is what we are trying to do here as well. We are trying to run the loop when this is end of the inner for loop, this is end of the outer for loop, this is end of the main method, and this is end of the class definition. This will help you understand where things start and where things end, where the piece of code starts and piece of code ends. After calculating, all we need to do is just simply print it, and we are printing it outside of the inner for loop and within the outer for loop. We will use the quotation mark. We will say %d \t %d %n comma the number, which is my number, comma my factorial. It shall print in a more tabular manner if we have written everything correctly. Let us attempt to run this, and we shall run our application nice and clean by clicking on the start button, and we have 2 factorial is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 24, 5 is 120, 6 is 720, so on and so forth. Look at the number we get for 20 factorial. 20 factorial is composed of so many digits. I mean, this is just phenomenal, right? You can imagine how big the number has suddenly got by just getting to the factorial of 20. So that brings me back to the question we had with what difficulty might prevent you from calculating the factorial of 100. This is an answer that you can write as a comment to say the difficulty of calculating 100 factorial is that the number will be so large that we will not have a data type to store that large number. The number of integers in that 100 factorial will be so huge we practically cannot store it. And there are different ways, there are data structures we can create to store such things, but they're kind of beyond the scope of our discussion here in our class, so I may probably not go there. But the amount we'll be storing is so huge that there is no native data type in Java to store it. But this is the literal code that you need to submit for the assignment for week number 11, exercise 513. And the other two that you need to answer are the one noted above, the 5.5, and the difference between while and for loop. Please submit it on the chapter 5 assignment on Canvas, and hope this video was useful. I will post assignment 8 link right here under week 11, so you can use this video that I'm recording right now. As I have always mentioned, if you come across any problems, I am reachable by my cell phone, through email, and my office number. You are welcome to come to DeSoto campus to meet me anytime here, or another time you can set an appointment with me. I'm always here to help you in any way possible. Thank you. Hope this video was useful, and I look forward to